If we were ever told that life is a forward, upward moving line, then we've surely by now have realized that that's not how life works. It's not so predictable. We're not in quote unquote control of it in the way that we would like. The 5-year, the 10-year plan are lovely intentions, but so much of life, especially in these times, as we're really shifting into a very different kind of energy, things are happening at a very different speed, in a very different way. And what I'm recognizing is that so much is about having a very clear intention, but allowing, trusting, accepting, really going into this state of flow versus resistance, trust versus trying to control and contain and grasp onto. So what I want to talk about today is that because life ebbs and flows, because it goes in squiggly lines, because these are hugely transformational times, it all asks of us to be very present, but it requires resilience, endurance, and an unwavering trust in what we cannot see and what we cannot know yet. So I want to talk about these things, and I want to talk about the obstacles, the challenges that get in the way of us being in flow. And flow doesn't mean that it's always effortless and easy. Flow means that we're just not creating any more resistance than is necessary, and that we're not getting in our own way, and that we're not fighting against what simply is. So that's what we're going to dive into today. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. I don't think life was ever meant to go according to plan, because that would be way too predictable and way too oversimplified and easy, right? I think maybe in the past there was a little bit more of an element or a like illusion that it was controllable and predictable, because you went to school, and then you went to university, and then you graduated, and then you got the job, and then you got the wife or the husband, and you got the house with the picket fence and the car and the kids and and there was kind of this illusion of like, and there you go, there your ducks are all in a row, and you're doing life properly and the way you should do it, and then there you go, you've done it, and then one day you die. And I don't think that's why we're here. I think we're here to learn about ourselves and to have experiences that expand and evolve and grow our souls. And we're meant to enjoy it, and we're meant to gain greater wisdom through the challenges and the suffering that can also equally arise being human, because Lord knows it's not so easy a lot of the time. But now more than ever, in a world that is just rapidly changing and is time is moving at a different speed, and there's so much chaos, and there's a lot of destruction and dismantling and transformation and death and rebirth, and it's epic. These times are epic. All the more that kind of really predictable, linear, get your ducks in a row kind of life, it just doesn't work like that anymore. And I think the beautiful part of that is that people are really stepping more into a state of authenticity and connection and heart-centeredness, and really asking what has meaning. Not just what should I do because society tells me to do that. Not just hopefully no longer wanting to chase the carrot or be in the rat race, or that, that kind of success or achievement or quote unquote validation, but it's not really validation, that maybe that's just doesn't mean so much anymore. It's a bit empty, right? So a lot of people might be going through a kind of crisis, spiritual crisis, existential crisis, because reality is being augmented. But I believe that it's heading in a really good direction, albeit that transition can be quite tumultuous. But we've really got to let go of this idea that life is linear, because it's not. It actually never was. That's a total illusion. Because if you look at nature is cyclical. And if you look at a woman, she is cyclical. So it was a very left brain, masculine on steroids kind of way of viewing life, that it's linear and you have your 5-year plan and your 10-year plan and it should go according to that. And again, maybe there was a period of time in history where that kind of worked, but I think now it's like, well, but does that even make me happy? Because how many people have ticked off the list? They've done everything right according to what society has told you to do, and then they go, God, but I'm not happy, right? And we're meant to have this experience and hopefully have some joy and happiness in the midst of it, right? Because it's too hard otherwise. So I want to encourage us to really embrace this idea that life is not linear, that you are not in control of it in the way that you would like to control it, or the way that society has told you should try to control it. And to come it more into a place that it ebbs and flows, it squiggles, it moves in cycles, and it's something that we can get so future-based. We're projecting constantly into the future that we forget that we actually live in the now. But living in the now can also, it creates a huge grounding once we can really surrender to it. But since we're so used to going into future and planning and predicting and projecting and controlling and knowing it, which I talked about last week, which creates actually a greater sense of anxiety because we're not actually trusting, because we're not really being in the present moment. And so the present moment can feel really vulnerable at first because it's like, yeah, but I want to know. I want to know what's going to happen next. And because we're coming more from a place of fear and anxiety and wanting to know, we kind of bypass our intuition, the presence that we need to be able to listen to our intuition, to trust our bodies, the sensations, the cues, the language, and what can arise out of the present moment. And so if we're not here and we're not present, we miss a lot of things. We don't catch a lot of things. And so we can it's kind of like being thrown around a little bit in a storm. Life can be like that. Or we hold on to dear life to our 5-year plan. But then if anything knocks us off course, and life inevitably will, because it's not predictable, then we get so thrown because we've lost the ability to be resilient. Resilience comes by being in the constant energy of change and growth and evolution and, flow, actually, which to me is about movement. We've kind of tried to create lives that are actually pretty stagnant because we're so fixed on routine. You get up at this time. This is what you have for breakfast every day. You drop the kids off at this time, or you go to work at this time. You have this kind of lunch. You see your friends on these days. You have this TV show that you watch. Things get very regimented. And maybe we have a bit of a spontaneous thing here or there. I'm not saying that it's all like this, right? I'm just kind of trying to make the point. Even like, when people go on holidays, it's specific times of the year. And of course, there's the possibility for spontaneity within that. There always is. But what I'm saying is as a kind of overall, we do live kind of really predictable, regimented lives. However, it's ironic because nothing is predictable, right? So coming into this present moment and being with the actual flow of life as it happens, that's where we learn how to dance with life. And by learning how to dance with life, we learn what resilience is that maybe I'm dancing along the path and then there's a stone and I trip, but I know how to come out of that trip with grace. right? Actually happened to me this morning. I tripped on my trouser bottoms and I tripped in a way that it's like, had I been rigid, I would have gone face down and come up with a broken nose. But I kind of like hopped out of it in a very graceful way and I laughed. I was like, oh, that was a nice save, Corinne. But it's a really good analogy for when we're in flow. It means that we're fluid enough to be able to go with the direction that the energy is taking us in. And sometimes it's going to be easeful and fluid and you're riding this nice wave and you're surfing it all the way to the shore and the sun is shining and the sky is blue. And sometimes it's a storm and you're getting battered by the wind and the rain and the lightning and the thunder. And in those moments, it's like the analogy of be the willow. Be the willow in the wind versus the rigidity of a like a board of a stiff tree that will just crack under the pressure. And I feel like we've lost this kind of resiliency because we're trying to control our environment like just way too much. And there's a lot of fear that is still permeating the fabric of society and the way that it's run and the way that it's been built. And I think this is part of the transformation is we're moving out of that. And I'm seeing people drop more into their heart. I'm seeing people coming more into presence and self-awareness, and even the words that people are using is coming more from a place of love, and that's beautiful to see. But you also have the opposite end of the spectrum where people are still very much coming from fear and judgment and duality. But looking at resilience and endurance, that's another thing. So I will just bring it back to kind of my personal situation as a means to just exemplify and maybe some of you relate, maybe you don't, maybe you'll relate at a different point. So I'm in this process of change, of wanting to create change, of transition, of wanting to move. And it's been such an experience of learning how do you let go? How do you surrender? How do you allow? How do you trust? How much do you do and you're proactive and you throw the lines out there, but then where's the point where you try too hard and actually get in the way, right? You try to control a little bit too much. You try to force things a little bit too much because you want to know, because you want to get there, because you want to have your ducks all in a row. And so it's been this real dance of, opportunities coming in and it feels like a miracle and wow, it's amazing, expansive. I'm finally doing it. And then all of a sudden it gets pulled away like that. And then it's like, oh shit, I'm back to square one. And what it's teaching me, and I've had this experience, several times in my life now, well, enough times to remember, where it really teaches me resilience and endurance. And here's the thing, to not go into the story of defeat, of failure, of I'm doing it wrong, of whatever the old kind of, again, I don't usually use these words, but like the negative pattern, the negative story, the negative thinking, that it's like, oh, the moment an obstacle comes in, that's it, I failed, or it's wrong, or, I've got to give up, and of course there's going to be a part of you that might want to. There's a part of me this last weekend after this kind of real high and then super crash where I just thought, well, fuck this, I give up. I've put so much energy out there and I'm not getting anything in return. I give up. But I know myself too well that like I might say I give up for 2 days and then I'm not going to stay giving up, because I also know that basically giving up means you're not really living your life. And I do believe that we are in a co-creative process. Now, with the universe and manifesting, I do believe that we are shifting into a very different energy. So there are elements of it that is just not working in the same way. And there is some density and the timing of things aren't working. But what I recognize today is that I think sometimes when you go into manifesting, you're kind of like handing all of your authority over to the universe. You're like, okay, this is my intention. You make it happen. And if it doesn't happen, it's like, fuck you, universe, why aren't you doing this for me? But there's an element of that that's still kind of handing over our power to something else, whether it's the universe, whether it's God, whatever the context, whatever the frame, whatever the belief system that you're working with, or your view or perspective, whatever feels true for you. And I was realizing how, well, actually, if we are co-creating this life, then we have just as much, well, we at least have half, let's say we have a portion of the power to create what we want to create. And so there's something about this taking self-responsibility, being self-empowered, knowing that we're sovereign, showing up as adults, and really saying, this is what I would like to make happen. This is what I would like to create. The trick is there still has to be an energy of softness. We cannot control. We cannot force. The analogy that I think I've shared before that I really love is one that Ram Dass gave in relationship to parenting, but I really think that this is so true for life in general and anything that we're wanting to create. It's like he said, you cannot force the flower to grow. You can make sure that the soil is well kept, that it gets sun and it gets water, but you cannot actually physically force the flower to grow. And so I think this is where the partnership is with the universe, with God, is that we can have the intention. We can work with creating an environment, which means do your inner work, be in presence, take self-responsibility, hold your inner child, work with your emotions, tend to your needs, listen to your body, take care of your body. That's all creating a good environment. Take care of your mind. Be mindful of what food you ingest. Be mindful of what you ingest into your consciousness. But the rest, whatever the intention is the seed, and then you gotta let the flower grow. And I think that's the part of the universe, because that's the mystery of the unknown, right? And the more that we can be in this dance where we are sometimes leading and sometimes following, but that we can be resilient in the dance. And the endurance comes from just not having life be wanting to be so predictable and so easy and so just at the end of our fingertips and at one button and one click and all of that, that then we have no endurance because we just think, oh, if it goes wrong, then I give up. It's too hard. The part of this process is that we have to endure, but through the endurance, we get to rise. As a friend reflected back to me, she's like, I see you just rise and rise and rise, even if you're having to go through so much and there are these setbacks. That she was reflecting, I continue to rise. And that to me is resilience. That to me is the unwavering trust. That to me is the dedication that I have to myself to say, you know what? I deserve this. This would bring me joy. Now, when something isn't shifting right away, we have to kind of stop and pause and go, okay, I can't force it. If we force it, if we try too hard, we get in the way of it. We become the obstacle. And from a quantum perspective, from a quantum field perspective, is we actually aggravate the quantum field. And so it just delays and it makes it harder for things to actually come in. But I also think sometimes it's like, okay, let me pause. Let me come back into that state of flow, into the state of trust, into the state of presence. But is there something that I still have to learn? Is there something that I still need to alchemize, transform, work on, heal? We've got to be really honest with that. If we're really wanting to walk an awakened path and do this consciously and not just be on autopilot, life is going to, in a way, kind of expect that from us in a good way, like in a loving way. It's like, okay, you want to level up, then you got to really show up. You got to step up to the plate. And so then it's like, okay, if you want to live on that level, you have to go through your closets. You have to clear out, not because there's anything wrong with you, not because you're broken, not because of anything that's bad, but it's because when we work through those things and we sift through what we don't need anymore and we let go of the beliefs and the stories that go with it that aren't true, we become more free, we evolve, and that to the soul is really hugely interesting. And in a way, very much of why we're here, or at least a part of why we're here. And so right now I'm having to go, okay, I'm at a standstill. I'm not moving forwards now. I had this huge momentum and all of a sudden it's kind of like, boom, I'm against the wall. And so I'm having to really ask myself, is there something more that I need to learn? And part of what I feel like I'm learning is to let go of an old story, perhaps. Life is hard. Or the story that I've had of being here, the resistance that I have of being here where I live right now, or the frustration that I have at the universe, or feeling like there's no option, or I'm imprisoned, or victimized, or whatever it is. Like really being honest with like, I don't want to replay any of that anymore because it doesn't serve me and it doesn't actually work and it's actually not even true. And I can feel what that does to my energy. It brings me back into a state of presence. It brings me into a place of receptivity because I feel myself opening. And then it's really being like, okay, maybe the direction that I'm going in isn't that's maybe I'm being kind of redirected. Maybe there's another place that is a little bit more in alignment with what I'm looking for. Because here's the thing is if we expect life to look a certain way, that 5-year plan, that 10-year plan, these are the boxes that we need to tick. It's actually very limited. And life might be like, whoa, there's so much more for you. There's actually so much more for you, but you're limiting it based on what your mind believes is possible or what your mind thinks you should be doing. And actually, there's so much more. It's so much vaster. So when we come back into a state of presence, we can much more easily come into a state of receptivity because we're no longer trying to force things. It doesn't mean we don't do anything. We still have to be proactive. You still have to be the fisherman that throws out the line, but then you wait to see if there's a bite, and then you let the fish come to you. That's very much the process of manifesting, is that you put the threads out there. You have a very clear intention. It has to be matched with feeling and coming from a place of integrity and coming from a place of conscious awareness, because otherwise you're going to pull something in, but it might not be what you actually want. But you have to just kind of wait and allow it to come, right? This is the dance. You put something out and then the dance will also come back and match you. It requires such a tremendous amount of trust, especially in a society that doesn't really understand trust anymore because it's trying to control everything. If we try to control everything, we don't think we need trust because it's like, well, I'm in control of everything and I can predict everything that's going to happen. And then where's trust needed? Trust is often needed when we don't know. And we don't have the next step. We don't have that clarity. And here's the thing, when it relates to relationship, so many people try to control their partner because they want to control what's going to happen next, because that gives them the illusion that they're safe, because they don't feel like they can trust, not just trust the other person, but trust the evolution of that relationship, trust the connection of that relationship, trust themselves in loving and being vulnerable and having an open heart. Trust is a relationship with ourselves. And then it becomes a relationship with life itself. And then it becomes a relationship with others. But trust is fundamental to doing anything in this life. Because without trust, it's a lot harder. It still can be hard with trust, but trust is like that confidant that's like there with you in the corner being like, it's going to be okay. You're not alone. Don't try so hard. Don't force. Don't grasp. Don't grip. Don't control. Breathe. Can you be in a state of presence with yourself? Can you love no matter what comes up? The fear, the anxiety, the worry, the concern, the doubt, the anger, the frustration, the despair, the victimization. All of it is okay. All of it is part of the process. But if we can remain in presence with love and an open heart, anything and everything is possible from that place. And that's what cultivates greater resilience. And then that's what gives us the ability to, when I say endurance, I don't mean that you have to just endure and suffer and struggle. What I mean by endurance is that you can keep on going. You can keep on going even if it feels like an upward climb, even if it feels like there's loads of hurdles getting in your way, even if it feels really bloody hard. You can, and you have the endurance to keep going. And sometimes keep going also means take a pause. Be in this moment, breathe, reassess, pay attention, see what's around you. Do you need to change the course a little bit? Or do you need to just pause for a moment and catch your breath and then you keep on going? It's so much about listening to ourselves, listening to all of the cues that are around us. And we don't listen so much anymore because there's so much noise. It's hard to listen when there's so much noise. And then when we listen, we've got to learn how to trust what we hear. Right? So it's all wrapped in together. And this is why I just am such a believer of do the inner work, not to fix yourself and be better because something's wrong with you. Do the inner work because if you get to understand yourself, life just becomes more, I don't even know what the word is. I know I come back to kind of easeful. It's not easy, but easeful, because if you understand yourself, it's like you have a language. You're no longer like, trying to understand what the hell is going on. And you're hearing it like in Chinese and you're like, I don't understand Chinese. When we do the work and we understand ourselves so that we understand how to be with ourselves when we're afraid and when we're worried and when we're anxious and when we're scared and when we don't know and when we're having a hard day and when we feel lonely and when we feel like want to give up, knowing ourselves is, I know how to show up for myself in those moments and love myself and hold myself. And so then, even in the scariest moments, you know you're going to be okay. Even in the loneliest moments, you know you're going to be okay because you're there for yourself and you love yourself. And it's easier to love yourself when you understand who you are and what you need. So I go back to this is really cultivating a relationship with yourself. It's learning the language of who you are, both as a personality and as a soul. Because both are in relationship, right? And both need to be in harmony, working together. And so that's no different. The dance between the soul and the personality and the dance between life and you, right? The universe and you in this life. It's there. We're never really alone. So I hope that this makes sense. I understand that I'm kind of being somewhat etheric about it, but on a practical level, this is really about shifting the way that we view life and just existence in general. It's not linear. We've been living linear lives for probably like thousands of years now. And it's really getting out of expecting it to be that way, because I think that's when we get really disappointed. Well, I thought it was going to go this way by this time. And then life's like, haha, no, it's not. And that's okay. Even right now, I'm having to let go of the timeline of when I wanted things to happen. And I've got to just trust the timing. And I've got to adjust and I've got to be resilient and I've got to keep on, enduring and still being curious enough to keep going and just dance the dance. So the moment that you catch yourself trying to control or predict or go into that linear fashion, just stop for a moment, take a breath. Breathe in, come into your body, come into awareness. And ask yourself, where am I trying too hard? Where am I trying to control? Where am I projecting myself into a future moment instead of being here in the present moment? Where am I getting in my own way? Where am I doubting? How am I not trusting? How can I trust more? How can I surrender and allow? In what areas do I need to be proactive? But to a point, and then I allow. It's all about coming back into a state of awareness. I will say that's the beginning of the spiritual alphabet. A for awareness. Are you aware of where you are as you move through life? Because then when you have self-awareness, then you have choice as to how you want to respond to any given moment and whatever situation you find yourself in. So what would happen if you stop looking at life linearly? And so then you're not so shocked when it ebbs rather than flows. You're not so shocked when it all of a sudden seems to take a left turn rather than going straight. You're not so shocked when all of a sudden the terrain gets a little bit bumpy and there's some stones along the way, and you might even stub your toe. The resilience comes because you know the path is not going to always be straight and smooth and forward and upward moving. So you allow, you accept, you go, oh yeah, this is life. And it brings you into this heightened present moment, which then can actually become really magical because you don't know what's going to happen next. But you trust it. And you know you're going to be okay. And then you're in partnership with the unseen. You're in partnership with the mystery and the unknown, rather than fighting against it all the time, all because we're afraid and we want to control. It's a radically different way of living life. And I can't say that I live from that place every day in all moments of those days. I come in and out of it. I've experienced phases in my life where I've really been in alignment with it, and phases where I've totally forgotten about it and done it very differently. But whenever I come back to these moments where it's radical trust, really coming into the moment, noticing that even when something appears to be really shitty and really breaks the plan, that I'm like, it's okay. I trust this too. Trusting is very convenient if it's all going well. It's very hard when it's not going well, but those are actually the moments that we really have to trust. It's the same that I say for self-love. It's really easy to love ourselves when we're happy, things are going well. It's harder when we feel like shit, but those are the moments when we really need it. We need to love ourselves. So it's no different, right? They're the same. Yeah. So I think I will leave it at that. Knowing that there's no right way to do it, there's no wrong way to do it. You can't succeed or fail at this. It's just, can you be open to trying things in a different way? Because you can also ask yourself, has it been working for you the way that you've been doing it? And if it has, great, then that's fantastic. But if it hasn't, or if there's something in you that feels like, God, I'd love to be more engaged with life. I'd love to be more trusting. You're going to have to step into the unknown and find courage there. and just walk in the dark and know that it's okay. Your inner light will turn on. And then just see what that's like. Try that dance. It's going to be a new dance. But, there are times where it's going to be scary and it's going to be hard, and there are times where it's going to be magical and it's going to be fun. And let it just be an experience. And notice what you can learn about yourself. And notice what you can let go of that you don't need anymore. And notice what you want to cultivate more of in your life. You are the creator. You are the maker. At least in part, right? So know if things aren't going according to plan, maybe let go of the plan. Come back to the intention. How do you want to feel? What is it? What is the state, the feeling state that you're trying to get to? If it's coming from fear, come back to yourself. Come back to your heart. Give yourself what you need so you can come back into a place of I'm safe. I am worthy. I am lovable. All is well. It's okay. I'm not alone. I'm taken care of. And then from that place, then come into what is the feeling that I'm wanting to experience within myself in this life, in this moment. And then that's what you focus on. And then you let that be the compass. You let that be the guiding force. And then life will show you the way. And your job is to remain present and to not give up and to keep going, but to listen. Listen, trust. Most especially trust yourself. All right, some food for thought as always. Take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.